Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show. Today's Newswire, joined by producer Alex.
What's up?
Normally we're live on Monday. Today we're live on Tuesday. If you're joining on LinkedIn, Facebook, if you're on YouTube, it doesn't matter. You got the recording. So glad to be here with you today.
Woo.
There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing going on in the world. There's no such things as tariffs. The stock market is just, fine. The world is good, right, Alex?
Oh, man. If it only were so. I think, today, obviously, our focus is all around.
You see that?
Oh, that looks beautiful, by the way.
For those of you that, aren't, necessarily watching, you saw I shared the journal that attendees at the Impact Driven Leaders Summit, May 7th and 8th in Spokane, Washington, will receive. We just got home from Hawaii. We're there on spring break, if you can't tell. I have not been sitting in a tanning bed or endless spray tans. This is sun-kissed.
Hawaii getting a Hawaii tan.
I did. And it was crazy. I didn't think I was that dark until I got on camera.
I noticed.
You noticed right away. What's funny is Alex and I started working together in November, and I don't know what we were talking about. I'm like, oh, you just wait, dude. I will look like a different person come summer. I think we were talking about the camera and lighting, and it's like a little washed out. I'm like, I got to get my color back, and then we're good. So
you look good though. You look healthy. You look healthy.
We're going to talk about today this kind of I would say war within countries, between countries, without any shots fired, but the shots are fired, and that is between the U.S. and China. And we've seen over the last couple of weeks, the play out of the Trump tariffs, and now kind of it really is centering on China. Yeah, it's all about China. And, you hear these reports that, other countries have come and they've settled their tariffs, whatever that may be, or there's reports of countries calling and saying, thank you so much to the United States for bearing this cross. It is Holy Week. It is Easter. That is, it's kind of the U.S. has said, we got to do this because no one else can or will.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the can or will is a big deal because, who else has the economy that the U.S. does? No other country. Yeah. Who has the financial power? No one else. So if it isn't the leader of the United States going out on the limb for everyone, it's not going to happen. And, so we've seen that play out. But one of the stories, and this kind of goes along with this farming, a little bit of now that it's springtime, you see more and more green grow right outside. Look at those. They're just grazing right there. Cows are happy. It's beautiful here in the Pacific Northwest.
Springtime.
Is China buying U.S. farmland? And this goes back. It was something that was brought up. I saw over the last week. I brought up with you. You're like, yeah, this is old news, Tyler. This came back. This was June, July of last year. Well, it's back in the news today because you have, Cash Patel and others that are saying, hey, we're going to aggressively look at this.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, Tyler, you shared, it started with, as the week goes on, Tyler and I share a lot of different stories together. And one that sparked my interest was this Dr. Phil interview that he did with Trump a few months ago. It wasn't like recent, but it was a few months ago where Dr. Phil outlined this map showing the strategic locations of, and we got to be careful with this, like Chinese owned. It is owned by Chinese investment groups. It isn't technically.
Yeah, but let's clarify something that maybe people don't understand. There is in China, being a communist country, is it could be owned by entities within the country, but the government owns that.
Right.
They control it. They dictate what happens. So it could be like, oh, it's owned by this private enterprise in China. Like, no, it's owned by China.
Right.
The government, China.
Right. Yeah, of course. I just want to clarify that there was a lot of articles out there that, some said the Chinese government owns, which technically, yes, it can, but like from like a paperwork standpoint, it is technically owned by these Chinese investment groups. But you can do the your own thinking, and it's over 300,000 acres, strategically located around government and military sites across the U.S. And Donald Trump, President Trump, looks at it. I have to be. He has to be aware of that. That can't be just some like, oh yeah, thanks for sharing that. I had no idea. I'm sure.
But yes and no. Yes and no, because one of the things, and this was brought up, the New York Post. I mean, I think they would qualify under the fake news media, but anyways, they had a map, and it showed all of the Chinese-owned farmland. And one of the misconceptions to see these red blots scattered throughout the country is like, oh, that looks like so much land. It's like, well, the clarification is those are the counties within which there is Chinese ownership of land. Well, I go to where I live, okay? And I think it's funny, you ask people, when you look at a picture, who do you look at? You look at yourself, right? You don't look at anybody else and you're like, oh, my hair, it's sticking up. My head is too shiny, whatever it may be. Oh, my ears, are they really that big? Okay. And so I look at this map and I pull up and I'm like, all right, I know what county I live in, Washington. And in Washington, the county I live is in Spokane, Washington, right on the border in between Idaho and Washington. And we have an Air Force base here in Spokane. And what's funny is they have the base in Washington, which is south of Seattle, and there isn't ownership there, but there's ownership here and in this county where there's an Air Force base, which this Air Force base actually is the main refueling depot for the Pacific Rim.
Yeah. It says they own 80 acres in Spokane, Washington.
There you go. I mean, which is very interesting. I wonder where they own that and what it is. I mean, I'd probably do some investigation, but this map goes to show is that there's a lot of strategic where they own land based upon whether it's bases, whether it is, I would say, other, institutions that it just seems odd. Yeah. And I could say this, if you own farmland, you own farmland. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Ohio. I know what good farmland is as far as, man, that's valuable to own. Or in Washington, what's one of the biggest crops, the two crops that Washington grows? Hay and apples. And I'm like, okay, I can understand. I know where that's grown in this state. And I, from a previous, history, I knew there was a lot of alfalfa. There's a lot of hay that gets exported to Asia from this area. I could understand that stuff. That's not here in Spokane. That isn't what's growing here.
Well, and also the most land that they own is in Utah and in Arizona, tens of thousands of acres. What would they grow in those climates in like Western Utah?
That would be alfalfa. That's where I could totally understand. Like Saudi Arabia owns land in Arizona, large tracts of farmland. This was brought up about a year or so ago, and they're like, oh, they're stealing our water. It's like, okay, well, they're paying for it. I mean, we won't get down that path, but I think the conversation needs to come back to is this a real threat, and or what are we doing about it?
Yeah.
And here's the first take that I had is I think we're so naive in this country to think that counterintelligence doesn't happen.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the stories that are being told and being said about, this entire, I would say, land grab situation and or what we're doing to address it and block it, and to think that, oh, is this a real threat? And you're having people like, the commentary, and this is very tongue-in-cheek. This is very, very parenthetical. It's very phrased. It's just like, oh, well, they can't be doing anything bad. Like my kids asking, like, why is it such a big deal that Chinese owns TikTok? Because TikTok knows more than what you know about your wife than you know. Like, like TikTok knows more about my kids than I know about my kids. And when you think about how that can be used as a manipulative tool, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, when you think about all of the, over the scammers, the hackers that have done stuff with information, you're like,
yeah, data
and
sharing.
yeah, and to not think that in, all the different movies that we can watch, they aren't made up about all this espionage. Like, it's legit. And to not think that China doesn't have strategic ownership in areas to have people placed. What I mean, shame on you for not thinking it's possible.
Because we do the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's right. Of course, like if we're doing it, why would anyone else not do it? Right?
There's some good books that have come out recently about people like, yeah, I was a former spy. And it's like all the things that you think, oh, is that really Jason Bourne? Is that like movie made up? Is like the Americans that show from, 8-10 years ago about, Russian insurgents that were like placed in government agencies that were straight up, born in Russia, came here as like young children and grown to be these Russian operatives. Like that was the show.
Yeah.
Like that's not a far fetch because it's been documented. They've figured that stuff out. Like it's not sci-fi.
Yeah. It's information sharing, right? You're monitoring, they're monitoring us and our activities and what we're doing to them. And,
it's kind of like football. You watch film like to know what the other team is doing. Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of like Bill Belichick.
You could go that way where we film their practices and from the upper level deck. I mean, whatever.
Spying. Spying. It's just.
I think the concept here is it is a real threat, and it should be something as a country we should be like, yeah, thank you for. I mean, let's go back. Like this was one of the best. It was one of the most documented as like, wow, espionage operations. If you go back to the pager explosion of about a year ago, right? Remember that where the Mossad, the Israeli, secret intelligence operation was able to switch the batteries from these pagers for all of the was it Hamas or was it Al Qaeda? I don't, forgive me for not knowing exactly. I didn't intend to talk about this today, but they switched out the batteries and like they took out 2,000 operatives in one moment. Yeah. Like that's a legit big deal to think that that's going on. And we don't have, Chinese operatives that are working on farms close to Air Force bases using that as here's the thing. Yeah. Here's the thing that's most interesting to me is it may have nothing to do with the fact that they own land close to a base. What it does is it gives them reason to be in the community, interacting with people that maybe work at the base, building relationships, right? Oh, where do you work? Well, I own, I work at the farm. Like, however that may be connected as a buffer zone for their operation. God, I think it's altogether plausible.
Anything's possible now in this day and age. I mean, also the technology, I feel in between the satellite technology, the listening capabilities that, both of these governments have, like it must be so difficult to, keep things secret. You probably, a lot of this is underground. A lot of what you don't even see it because it's underground.
It's got to be human intelligence.
Yeah. And some human intelligence and what they're capable of doing. I think, it's the pager thing is interesting because that was at the supply chain level where they were able to infiltrate these pagers at the supply chain level and execute this order, which is crazy to think about. It's funny. My wife orders stuff from Temu, the Chinese, the super cheap stuff, and she ordered a hard drive, and she was like, "Oh, this is from Temu. I ordered it." I was like, "Do not put that in your computer." I was like, "You don't know what that could be filled with. They could easily just steal all your information." I would not put that in.
Yeah. Now,
So
there is a point of, it's to be fearful of that and or just be aware, right?
yeah,
And it's, well, what was it that there was, man, I think something to do with electrical capacitors, electrical supply, and it was being held up at a port in, I think, South Texas or Louisiana, where they had identified that these transformers, that these electrical components had spyware within them.
yeah, they do.
And,
Audio
so
equipment,
yeah,
everything. Yeah,
it's again, I mean, here's the point of it. And you may not think that, oh, what's the big deal? It's like, well, it is a big deal at some point because it comes to leverage. And if you can watch enough spy movies to know that it's all about leverage, how can I find you in a compromised position and then use that against you? That's how the system works, really. And so you may not think, oh, it's not a big deal. It's like, well, until all of a sudden you're held hostage by what information they know or could release. And then they get you to do little things, and little things, and little things, and little things, and then more things. And then you're like, all of a sudden you're a full blown, intelligence capturer. And it was simply because I don't want you to release a video that you found on my phone.
right. Of course. Tyler, let me ask you this: this whole tariff game with China, right? That's what it sounds like it's come down to. Just this tariff
it's a chess
war
match.
between the US and China. What is the goal? Like where do we want this? How as, the US, do we want it to end in favor of us? China's asking for respect. You need to respect us, and you're disrespectful. What is the play?
Man, my belief is that it's getting to the point where China doesn't hold the power over us in the United States as far as manufacturing and consumption. And, it's hard. I've seen reports of people are like, well, I've tried to, have something manufactured here in the U.S. and it's untenable. It's infeasible to manufacture here. I think even the joke the other day was Nike's not changing. Nike, is paying $3 a shoe in, Vietnam or wherever. And this was a story. It's made up. Take it for what it is. It may be true. They're paying $3 a shoe and selling them, $3 per pair of shoes, selling them for well over $100 here. That's a lot of margin. Okay. You raise it to $6. Okay. Because what you're going to see is you're going to see them play the game in regards to what's the value. Oh, well, the raw product coming in is a value of $1.50. Well, I'm going to pay the tariff on that, not what it retails for in the US. I'm going to repackage it in the US, and therefore it is a now US product, and now I get to market it for $200. Did you pay a tariff on $200? No, you paid a tariff on $3. So we're going to see... we're going to start to see more of those games. It's kind of like, I don't know if you remember, we talked about this a year within the last few months, where there can be beef that is grown in Argentina. Okay.
Right.
And you slaughter the animal there. They ship them to the US in refrigerated containers, and they will ship, like, usually when you slaughter beef, you'll cut them in half. You'll hang them in half. They will bring them here. They will then take and cut that half down into all the steaks or ground beef and label it as US beef. That is like part of, like, that's the process. And that's where they want to start to change some of these labeling things. You're going to start to see the same thing happen is, if I can bring a part from China and I put two parts together here, I'm going to have people put it together here and I pay less tariff. So you're going to have that stuff play out over time. And that's the difference between people that understand business and people that are lazy.
I have something to bring up that is
all right,
slightly off topic, but on the top. I was at Trader Joe's the other day, just because you brought up Argentina and beef, and so
Argentina actually grows great beef. I mean, they have a great.
Well, so this is my problem. I bought this ribeye from Trader Joe's, and it's an Argentinian, ribeye or whatever.
Okay. Okay.
and it wasn't that great.
Okay.
I really did not enjoy it that well.
Okay.
I like the grass fed,
What didn't you like
USDA.
about it?
Maybe it was the cut. It was a little
It was a
thinner than I
ribeye,
usually like it. It was I like ribeye, but like the
okay,
thickness was it was a little thinner than I like.
little thin.
And
So that means it's going to cook faster.
yeah, and
So you
Trader
literally got to
Joe's,
kiss it. You
yeah,
know.
like Trader Joe's. I never really do buy meat, but we were there. I was like, that looks pretty decent. Wasn't a big fan.
Okay.
I was just not a bit. I'd rather go to my local, grocery store and buy a nice cut there. But I was not
Okay.
impressed by the
Okay.
Argentinian beef at
Okay.
Trader Joe's.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
A little off topic, but we'll bring it back around. I think when you come back and ask the question of what's the play on China and the tariffs, it is to put them on defense and to say, you can come after us how you think you're going to get us. Really, the way that we're going to get you is putting a finger on what you have control over us. Like the amount of products, I mean, you and I could go through our office and, all right, this product made in Australia.
Yeah, let's see.
You know, like you start going through and you're like, where is stuff made? And this was the other piece that was interesting is when, somebody made a comment is, tell me something good made in China, Sony. Tell me something good as far as like revolutionary. No, it wasn't necessarily quality, but name something revolutionary that's come out of China that they've added as a patent, no, they just steal the tech and make it super cheap.
Man,
and the play on that is like, all right, why do they make it super cheap? Is they have to have a way to employ their citizens. Okay. That's a valid pursuit. They don't give them much. They you talk about these industrial cities, but then as well, they're such masters at copying and then selling at a discount, and like the dupes, the fakes, the mimics that, all right, that's just the game they play.
I think that's half right, because I mean, listen, China, and I think it's because of the government. I think China has a lot of super smart people.
Sure.
And when they develop something actually really good, it doesn't get to the point of let's bring it to the market for the people. The government ends up taking over that technology, if it's
which
really
happens.
good, and bringing it, because it's the communist country, bringing it into some sort of military or federal agency, and it gets hidden away, and it gets put. So I don't want to just say like they're really. So
then it becomes like a bargaining
yeah,
chip.
It's like, we've developed something really interesting, but we own it as the government.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be able to.
Well, I think that's where you see a lot of defectors. You see a lot of people that have defected that have, the institutional knowledge, the perfected knowledge. Hi. I just picked her up from the kennel. She was there. She got a good report. She's a very good girl.
Honey was a good doggy.
Yep. She had to go to quarantine because she just likes to play so much that some of the other dogs get scared of her. And so,
she's a big girl.
But our kennel has the option where you can do snuggle time. So you can have them. She gets snuggled, and she's a snuggler. So of course she loved that. But coming back to this idea of what's the play, I think the play is to say, hey, I'm bold enough as a U.S. president to kind of stand up to you, China, and this is the time. And you know what? It's interesting because I think as we're continuing another day of, business, and this is this business as usual? Is this new? Is this different? As I'm pulling up where the stock market is today, as we're recording this live, it is, very, very flat. We're just under 41,000 on the Dow. If we look at the edge of the S&P is just over 5,400. We've kind of seen this, chop and, this, fall apart. And then, and this was what's funny is when people are like, are you scared? Like, fundamentally, not much has changed.
Yeah.
And so when we look at, this idea of what's going on in China, whether it's the farmland, whether it's the tariffs, whether it is I'm going to put you on notice. you're not going to take us over. And, one of the things that got brought up, and maybe this happened last week, I haven't seen reports of it. The Chinese government is one of the largest holders of US dollars, US debt. Because of what happened with the treasury notes and everything else, did that kind of rebalance it? It's like, oh, you guys have to come, you lose some of your leverage on us. Maybe that's a short-term
printing money. China is in quantitative easing right now. They're printing a lot of money to inject into their economy because they were on a downward trend.
And this was enough to kind of put them on their heels and saying, okay, and again, I think I made this comment a week or so. It's been a couple weeks ago now when we discussed it. Is, man, it's really hard to look at these things with a microscope and discern what's going on when you really need to be using a telescope. Meaning it's a lot further down the road rather than just the here and now.
Yeah.
And you got to put up with a little bit of the here and now. And here we are, a week, 10 days later, and the stock market is just flattened out. It's flat. Okay. What was, all the people that were saying the world is ending, this will be the worst thing since the Great Depression and beyond. Now, it's leveled out.
I agree. I mean, that's typically what happens. I think, something will get negotiated at some point,
Yeah.
Money talks, as it always does, especially between two massive nation states that, have the biggest, deepest pockets in the world, and they'll figure it out. I mean,
especially when both are reliant on each other at
so many ways.
I would say, I think the U.S. doesn't understand how reliant on China we are. If we really understood the amount of consumables every day that we have that are Chinese derived, I think it would shock people. Especially when you think about the civil agents, and when you think about the documented deplorable work conditions that are in China, and people are like, oh, like my wife had a point during and right after COVID, got very heavily in the TikTok, Instagram influencing and clothing, everything else. And she saw a documentary, I think this is on Netflix within the last year or so, about how deplorable a lot of the clothing environment where Amazon is driving a lot of products, Chinese products. Fashion. And she's like, I'm out. I can't be a part of that. Yeah. And I think if anything, maybe that's a point to come of this, is like, how do we look at this where we can understand what's really happening? The backside of that is, here's the best thing to happen. Whether it is like I made the kind of the comment about the, I would say, reordering, restructuring, kind of consolidation, I get 3 parts from China, I bring them here, I put it together in a manufacturing facility and then resell it to circumvent the game. That's a job.
Yeah.
That's a job that we need to employ people, because here's what's happened to our jobs. Last night, we're walking through the airport. It's 11 o'clock at 10:30 at night. And I see this like industrial Roomba. So this like industrial vacuum, robotic
vacuum. Yeah.
Going through the airport. And I said something to my daughter. I was like, oh, look at that. It's a, Roomba. And she goes, I made a comment. It's like, somebody used to do that job.
Yeah.
Now it's a robot that does it. So when we talk about, the cost of, minimum wage, whatever else, like that's what we've traded. And guess where that robot was probably put together, constructed, where all China. The parts came from?
Oh, for sure.
China.
Yeah.
So we're trading U.S. jobs for Chinese technology to come and replace our jobs. Hello, let's wake up. And so if that means we order things and we bring a job back here, it's a job.
I do think Trump's macro play is to bring more manufacturing jobs and jobs overall back to the United States that have been shipped overseas over the last 20 years, 30 years. That's going to take time, right? Building these plants, that's time, right, to build all this that
Well,
they're going to build.
I think
What
it's
does that-
time, but it's going to have to take a massive, massive psychological change.
Yeah, that's true. The other part of that is it's not going to come back as big as it was before because of all the advancements in robotics and technology.
Yeah.
Those manufacturing plants are going to be filled with robots that may have been built in China, preferably here in the US, but they'll obviously fill a lot of new roles and positions, but it's still
I mean, you're going to need maintenance staff, repair staff, operational staff.
Yeah.
It's going to look like, if we look at this idea of moving jobs back into manufacturing, it's not going to be the consummate Henry Ford assembly line worker. It's not. It's going to be a higher technical operative job. And again, psychologically, we're going to have to embrace that. It's like, oh, what do? I work at a factory. I oversee 50 robots. I fix them. I, make sure they're efficient. Whatever else. I'm essentially sitting in a control room playing video games because that's what it comes down to. And it's like, all right, that is the future construction, manufacturing job.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
As we wrap up in our time here, Alex, one of the things that, mention again, the Impact Driven Leader Summit, May 7th and 8th in Spokane, Washington. Go to IDL Summit in order to find your tickets. Would love for you to be there. One last thing, Alex, as we look forward, your general feeling on the economy today. What's your general feeling?
Yeah, my general feeling on the economy today would be it's volatility.
Okay.
There's a little bit of uncertainty in the immediate. It feels like everything now is, let's look and see how it plays out with these tariffs and these negotiations, in that in the coming year and years, there will be a very strong jobs market, wealth generation for middle-class Americans to finally save and afford things and afford homes. I think there's a lot of people that are going, can this regime deliver? Right. I feel that right now. It's like a lot of uncertainty of like, all right, let's buckle up. Like, what's going to happen? And so that's kind of where volatility and uncertainty is kind of my temperature check of right now. How about you?
It's like we're in the third week of January. Everyone starts January 1st. I'm going to lose weight this year. I'm going to go to the gym. And you're a couple weeks into it and you're like, oh, I got to go up and go to the gym today. Or, I got to have that for food and change it. And it's about the third week. And, if you've been in the industry, you've done it yourself, you understand about that third week is like, am I really going to do this? Is this really going to work? Because I've been doing this for 3 weeks and I haven't lost anything. I'm miserable. I don't get to do what I wanted to do and I like to do. And that's where I think we are. We're about the third week of January. And here's what's going to happen is, through experience, are we going to make it to Valentine's Day? Are we going to make it to Valentine's Day? Because it's so funny. My friends in the gym culture is like, if there's a month to take off going to the gym, it's January. If you're a gym goer, just recover in the month of January, because you go back in February and it's a little bit lighter. And by Valentine's Day, all the pretenders are gone.
Yeah.
And then it's just your normal people. Like, what's funny is owning a private gym. We didn't have like a box gym. You think of a Planet Fitness, whatever. We had a small little gym. Our best month every year was March.
Really?
Because people would go through that. I can do it on my own. I can do it on my own. And then realize I can't do it on my own. I need help. And we're in that cycle. And it's going to very much, as we play out, there are people that are frustrated, that are pissed off. It's like, I just want to go have chocolate cake.
Yeah.
And you got to stick with it. And, or we're going to see that the people that really hone in, that are like, oh, let's look at the opportunity. Where's the loophole? How do I operate through this? They're going to see massive success in the next in that 3-week period. The people that are doing the work in March, dude,
Yeah.
they're looking great at spring break.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel that in this culture and society now, with this instantaneous gratification or satisfaction,
just give me my GLP-1 shot. I just want to take the shot and go eat whatever I want.
Yeah.
That's what people are looking for in the economy, and it's not going to happen. You got to do the actual, eat a balanced diet and, increase your activity. You got to do both.
Yeah. And in time, things will improve. I believe that. I'm an optimist. I think things are going to get really good. I don't know if there's going to be any sort of like cataclysmic reset. I mean, maybe. I don't know if it's in housing or banking or I don't know.
It'll all play out.
It'll all play out. So I don't really know. I think you just work hard and see how it all goes. But that's
all right. Well, thanks for all of you watching live today. And if you're watching on the recording, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to get notified each time we drop new content. I would love for this in the comments. Please share what you took away from today, what your thoughts are. Let's continue this conversation on each one of those platforms. Would love to have it with you. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.